Good morning everyone, another RF900 related video, and this is going to be cool as heck because I'm installing those GSXR camshafts in my RF900. So let's get going. So first step is removing the fuel tank and the right hand side fairing, so let's get it done now. And there we go. Next step is going to be to remove the airbox and carburetors. Okay, to get the airbox off you need to unscrew those little screws here. And then there's going to be two mounting points on the side, so I'm going to start with the one on the side. So the last step before we remove the carbs is to put a rag underneath the carbs here, and that way the fuel won't drip on your alternator. And you simply have to remove that clip here, and now just remove this hose. There we go. As you can see, there's been some little fuel drip, which is completely normal. And now simply pull the carbs away. Oh, you don't need to disconnect the cables because you can just hang your carbs on the side. Right, so now I'm going to be taking both ignition coils off. So what's advisable before that is to take a picture of how the cables were connected. So in my case, I know that orange cable was at the top and blue or black cable was at the bottom. Coils will be held by 2 bolts. So it's simply a case of removing those 2 bolts. Was from the engine. Where's the other one? There we go. Get the coils off. So that's your coils removed. Now do the same for the other one. Next step, of course, remove the spark plugs, and for that you're going to have to use 16mm spark plug key for RF900. There we go, plugs removed. Do the same for all of them. Okay, now you're going to have to remove this signal generator's cover. This is going to be held by 5 bolts. They're going to come off nice and easy because there's not a lot of torque that they require to fasten them. This is only 14 Newton meters. Okay, now what you'll see here is your signal generator, the rotor, and I normally have what's called the ignition advancer in there. So look at the difference. But just for the sake of this video, I took it off so it looks more familiar to what you've got in your bike. So we're going to be using this in our procedure. Now let's remove the cylinder cover. There's going to be 8 bolts holding it, and try to spread your pattern evenly. The problem is this is going to be held rather tight because there was some gasket marker on it, so I'm going to have to use a dead blow hammer to tap it gently in a couple of places here. There we go. instead of just rapidly lifting it, try to give it a few wiggles here and there. Alright, come on, come on, come on. Okay, so there we have it. Alright, next step is going to be removing those oil pipes. They're going to be held by those two bolts. Okay, so just get this loose. It's all loose, let's get them off. Okay, be extremely careful not to drop anything in the engine. Okay, the left one comes out. The right one comes out. Right, now we're going to have to loosen up those cam holder bolts. Those are also 10mm bolts, same as those here. And you've got to do it evenly in a sort of diagonal way to release the load. So I'm just about to start stripping the top of the motor, but before we do it, it's a good idea to actually maybe take a picture how the motor was positioned. So I've put the motor in a position where this T mark is pointing towards the pickup coil. Okay, so I turned the crank clockwise to get that position, and then take a look how the camshafts are positioned. So you see that exhaust camshaft, which is this one here, is pointing inwards, and the intake camshaft, which is this one here, is pointing also inwards. So both are pointing towards the middle of the engine. The rotor and the T-mark pointing upwards. At least you know if something went wrong, how the engine was positioned before you started taking the things off. Alright then, so at that point I'm going to be removing the cam holders. And then we're going to be taking off the cam chain tensioner, which will allow us to finally lift the cams.
A few moments later.
All bolts removed, and now it should be just a case of basically giving a couple of wiggles to those cam holders and they'll come out. And be careful, there's going to be those dowel pins, and it seems like some of them will be sitting in the holder, other ones will just stay in the cylinder head. Also, pay attention to how those holders came out. There's going to be some marking on this, some arrows and letters. So A is the top left, B is the top right, C is the bottom left, and D, as you can see here, is the bottom right. Okay, that's the second one. That's a third one. And that one sits here and I can't move it, so you might have to use a dead blow hammer. And again, just give it a couple of very, very gentle taps. There we go. Okay, it moved, and now a couple of wiggles, and it comes out. So let me just show you what I've done here. So I've removed the cam holders with all the bolts and oil pipes, and I actually put them on, and I actually put them in the same exact arrangements as the engine had them in. So this is the cam holder A, that's B, that's C, and that is D. And even all the bolts that came out from those cam holders are in exactly the same spots, so that way I know it's just going to come back to the engine the same way it came out. And also those oil pipes, you see there's like a white mark here, a painted mark, so that means this has to be at the top. So don't be tempted by putting them in the wrong order, like this. They've got to be like this, and they've got to be pointing outwards. Okay, so you know that's wrong, and you know that is correct. Now I'm going to be removing the cam chain tensioner, which is just here, and it's held by two bolts, 1 and 2. There we go. Stick it in, and just make sure it sits in really well. Okay, that went easy. Okay, it's in. And again, try to remove it evenly. So if you're taking the left bolt out by, let's say, 2 turns, then go to the right one and do 2 turns. Okay, just about to remove the tensioner, and a little tip. Good idea to put a rag underneath the tensioner, because those 2 bolts might pop and fall inside that gap between the starter and the cylinders. So let's just remove those 2. And now the tensioner should just pop. There we go. Okay, so now you've got no tension on the chain, so removing camshafts will be very easy. So let's just pull this intake cam out. And now let's pull the exhaust cam out. And now you don't want to drop this chain, so you've got to attach it to something. So the way I finally secured the chain is I used this cord and I hooked it up to a mirror, and that way the chain won't drop inside the engine. So here we have it, 5 camshafts, and here's what we've got. Those 2 here are the cams that I've just removed from my bike, so this is RF900 stock camshafts. Those 2 here are GSXR 750W camshafts, so this is 1992 up to 1995 models. And this one here is RF600 exhaust camshaft. I've also got 2 cams for RF6, so I just wanted to tell you that this camshaft actually fits, and it seems like this is an exhaust one, and it looks literally just the same as the one from RF9. So yeah, and it's also got the same timing marks, so I guess this could fit as well, but will it provide you some performance benefits? I'm not entirely sure, because nobody's checked it before, I think. I'm not entirely sure. However, those 2 GSXR 750 cams, they will fit and they will work and they will give you performance gains, especially when it comes to high RPM, but there has to be work done to it to make them fit in the RF head. So this is a stock RF900 camshaft, and take a look at the end of it. You see this bit here? On the GSXR cam, this was sticking out up to here. So I had to actually shave it to make it nearly flat, and you've got to do that on both ends. You see, both ends are actually shaved. So what you have to do is you have to remove about 3 millimeters of each end, and then you're going to get the desired length of those cams. Now another thing is here, of course, on the camshafts you're going to have the timing marks. So then you can see this. Do you see it? Do you see it just here? That's a timing mark on the RF900 cam. So once you've removed all this, then you don't have any timing marks. So look what happened here. On this GSXR cam, once I've shaved this extra material, there's no timing marks. So what I've done, I've actually, before I removed this material, I've actually painted a line like this here, which would indicate where the original marks were, and then I made my own marks. See this line here? So I just basically touched it with the angle grinder to make my own timing marks, and that way valve adjustment in the future with GSXR cams can be done very easily. And now, once I've done both camshafts, so now both of them have those timing marks and the extra material removed on both ends, we can now basically put them in, no problem. This is going to be setting up the timing and putting the new camshafts in. So before we do it, as you well remember, the T mark has been set to point at this pickup coil, and the camshafts, before I removed them, the lobes on the right hand side were pointing inwards. So both were pointing towards the middle of the engine. Now, to follow the instructions from the service manual when it comes to setting up the timing, those lobes have to be pointing outwards. So what I'm going to have to do now is I'm going to have to turn this 180 degree. Okay. So we've got the T-mark again at the top, but the crankshaft has been moved, meaning the pistons have moved, and now I'm going to be able to put the camshafts in a position where the lobes on the right hand side are pointing outwards, which is the opposite as we had it before we removed the camshafts. Here we have it, the exhaust camshaft. I'm just about to put it in, but before we do it, have a look at this, folks. You see this red stuff on the lobes and camshaft journals? All that stuff is engine assembly lube. So you need to put some engine assembly lube on those points of the camshaft which are exposed to friction, because the last thing you want is your motorcycle to run on dry components. So don't forget about this here. This ring, this has to be nicely lubed as well. Alright, so before I put the camshaft in, let's just grab a bit of oil and make sure those pockets here are smeared with oil. So I'm going to be putting the exhaust camshaft in first. So, and remember the side with the timing marks, which is that side here with this groove, you see? That is going towards the right of the engine. So I'm going to put this in now. And remember, what we want is we want the last lobe on the right hand side to be pointing towards the front of the motorcycle, because we've now turned the crankshaft 180 degrees. Okay, so that is now sitting on the sprocket here. Same as before. Let's put some oil on the tappets and those pockets here. As you can see, the camshaft is nicely covered with assembly lube in all the points that have to be covered. And remember, the side with timing marks, which is with that groove here, goes towards the right. And the last lobe, this one here, has to be pointing towards the rear of the motorcycle, so the opposite way as the exhaust camshaft. Okay. Right, so both cams are in, and now this is going to be probably the trickiest part, is setting up the timing and bolting it down. Okay then, so setting up the timing. The camshafts are in, and now this is the right hand side of the motorcycle. And have a look at the front camshaft, which is obviously the exhaust camshaft. And what you've got to notice, can you see this little arrow here? Just here, that has to be flush with the surface of the engine, this here. So that's the correctly positioned exhaust camshaft. Now, let's go to see the engine. This is the second view, and as you can see, just over there, you've got this number 2 with the little arrow pointing up. Okay, and then if you go to the intake camshaft, you've also got little arrow here with number 3 next to it. It's difficult to see, but there's number 3 next to it. Now, what you've got to do is you've got to position your camshafts in a way that there's going to be 13 links between that arrow here next to number 2 and that arrow here next to number 3. So let's count them. So you're starting to count from the link that is directly above the arrow, which is this one here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You see, so this is correctly set up timing, because there's exactly 13 links between those two arrows. Arrow number 2 on the exhaust camshaft and arrow number 3 on the intake camshaft. So this is how you've got to set this up, and now we can bolt this all in. Next in the step of assembly is installation of the cam holders. So cam holder A, the longer one, goes on the top left, and just make sure you've got your dowel pins here, that you haven't lost them. There should also be a dowel pin here on the engine. And just remember that this part of the camshaft here, there's like a ring on this camshaft, has to engage with the groove inside this cam holder, so make sure they line up. Now holder B, and again just check you've got your dowel pins here. There should also be a dowel pin in the corner of the engine there when I'm pointing now. Then C, which is the one here, and the last one D. And same thing here with the camshaft. Make sure that this ring here nicely goes into the groove in the camshaft, into the holder. We've got the cam holders on, all the bolts are in, however they're not even snug, they're all loose. So the first step, I think it would be ideal if you just get them turned by a couple of rotations so they don't come out. Okay, so all of them engaged with the thread in the cylinder head, and now they've got to be torqued down in a sequence. And according to service manual, you're going to be starting with cam holder A, going with the top bolt and then the bottom bolt. And obviously you're not going all the way down now, you want to make sure that the bolts go in gradually. The next two bolts will be cam holder D, and you're going from the bottom bolt to the top bolt. Then there's going to be those two bolts in cam holder C, and we go from the bottom to the top. Okay, I can feel some resistance too. Now it's cam holder B, and we're going from the top to bottom. Bit of resistance, excellent. And now that one. And 5 and 6. You can feel some resistance, excellent. Now we're going with cam holder D, bottom to top. Now there's going to be cam holder C, and we're going bottom to top. Okay, and now obviously we're going 7 to 8, so we're starting from the top and then the bottom one. Right, cool. So I'm going to repeat all that in the same order, applying more torque. So this time I'm going to be using tools. Okay guys, so cam holders are on. They're not actually torqued down yet properly, but they're snug. So what you can see here is a rag which I've put there because you don't want to drop anything into this engine, man, because then it's a disaster. So you can now remove the rag, it's safe to do so. And now it's the time for putting the cam chain tensioner back in. And before I actually put it in, you can see there's a gasket on this tensioner here. And of course, Suzuki service manual calls for a new gasket every time you remove it, but I've done removal of this tensioner in a couple of Suzuki bikes without replacing the gasket, and it's always been fine. But hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing here. Okay, so first bolt grabbed it, second bolt grabbed it too, and now gradually we're going to be alternating from the left to right to make sure that the tensioner goes in evenly. So the tensioner is all the way in, nice and snug. And now it's time to once again recheck the timing marks on the chain. So let's have a look. Alright guys, so once again, it's all very tight now. Let's have a look if the timing is okay. So I'm counting the links. So I'm starting with this one here, because this is what the arrow number 2 on the exhaust camshaft is pointing. and it should be 13 links. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and that's our 13th link, which arrow number 3 on the intake cam is pointing at. So our timing is set correctly. Let's not forget about the very important step, which is torquing down all those cam holder bolts to 10 Newton meters. So I've got my torque wrench here set up to 10 Newton meters. So we're starting from here. Beautiful, that's a 10. Then here. Then here. Okay. Okay, 5, 6, then here. Now this is going to be a rather tough one with that one here because it's difficult to get the torque wrench on it. But it can be done. That's a 10. And that here is a 10. And the last one is those two here. That's a 10. Next we've got oil pipes, and let's not forget the white paint has to be towards the top and this arch has to be towards the right. Before you actually go ahead for total assembly and starting the bike up, make sure that you can actually turn the crankshaft. Okay, wish me good luck. Obviously there will be some resistance, however you can turn it. If it suddenly stopped and no matter what you did, it didn't want to go, that means something's wrong. Next step, which is very important and recommended, is to check the valve clearance. I've just done it and my valve clearance is within specs. It's not ideal, but it's within specs, so I'm happy with that. I haven't recorded it because I actually have a full video showing how to check valve clearance on my channel, so I'm going to include the link to that video in the description box, so please check it if you want. And what you want is between 4 and 8/10 of an inch on the intake side and between 8 and 12/10 of an inch on the exhaust side. And of course make sure that you've got a very tiny amount of gasket marker on your gasket, especially in those points here. And the surface of the cylinder head must be really nicely cleaned. Right, torque wrench set up to 14 Newton meters. And the last one here. I'm now going to reinstall the spark plugs.
A few moments later.
Time now to install this ignition coil. Let's push the carbs in. Okay, your airbox can be now put back on. Let's just not forget that this breather hose that comes from here has to go in between those two inlets, and that's going to be connected to the top of your valve cover. Alright, so next step and the last step will be installation of the fuel tank and the fairing. I'm not going to film this for obvious reasons, everybody knows how to do this. And then once the tank is on, we're going to start it up and see how it runs. Alright then, so I've got the fuel tank on. Moment of truth. Is it going to start? Now make sure you're going to check my next video, which is going to be a test ride with the new GSXR cams. Thanks for watching, till next time.